Hunting, the second Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends TV movie. If you're a fan of the show, you probably already know that Wilt is one of the most beloved characters in the entire series. He's the tall, red imaginary friend with a missing arm and one eye, who's basically the nicest character in the building. He apologizes constantly, he's absurdly polite, and he'll bend over backwards to help literally anyone. Which makes it kind of fascinating that the show eventually decided to ask the question, where did Wilt come from? Because the premise of Foster's Home is that imaginary friends are created by kids. When those kids grow up or can't keep them anymore, they go live at Foster's until someone else adopts them. So every friend in the house technically has a creator somewhere out there. And then Wilt Hunting finally gives us the backstory behind one of the most mysterious characters in the show. The movie basically starts with Wilt suddenly leaving Foster's without really explaining why. Everyone's confused. Blue is confused, Mac is confused, Frankie's confused. No one really understands what's going on. So naturally, Mac and Blue decide to go looking for him. And that kicks off the main plot of the special, a road trip style adventure where they try to track Wilt down and figure out why he left. Along the way, we meet a bunch of different characters, including several imaginary friends who are searching for their own creators. One of the characters is this guy who's very clearly inspired by comic book guy from The Simpsons. He's the stereotypical nerdy fan character who talks in a really dramatic language and treats everything like some kind of grand quest. It's pretty obvious parody, but it works because the show is always really good at sneaking those kind of pop culture jokes. That's something the Foster's Home show does really well in general. Even though it's technically a kid's show, there's a ton of humor that clearly goes over kids' heads. The writers packed it with little references and things that adults can appreciate too. But the real heart of the special is Wilt's story. Eventually, we learned that Wilt was created by a kid named Jordan, who was a basketball player. Wilt basically was his best friend and teammate, and because Wilt is Wilt, he always put Jordan first. But during an important basketball game, Wilt got injured trying to help Jordan win, and the injury is the reason he's missing an arm and an eye, which for a Cartoon Network show is actually a surprisingly emotional reveal. Wilt feels like he failed his creator, and that guilt is what drove him to leave Foster's and go searching for Jordan again. He wants to make things right. It's a very Toy Story type storyline, where the emotional core involves you getting back to the kid who originally loved you. That comparison feels pretty intentional too, because the emotional beats are very similar. Imaginary friends in this world aren't just jokes or side characters, they're basically stand-ins for childhood itself. And the idea that they might feel abandoned or want to reconnect with the kid who imagined them is actually pretty powerful. Eventually, Wilt finds Jordan, and we learn something really important. Jordan never blamed Wilt for what happened. In fact, he appreciated everything Wilt did for him. So Wilt's entire guilt trip was basically something he carried around for years that didn't need to exist. Which is actually a really sweet message for a kid's show. Sometimes we blame ourselves for things that other people already forgave us for. The ending is genuinely heartfelt, and it's probably one of the most emotional moments in the entire series. With all that said, I do have one criticism. Did this really need to be a 45-minute long TV movie? Because honestly, this feels like this could have just been a regular 22-minute episode. The story itself is pretty straightforward. The Foster's gang searches for Wilt, we learn Wilt's backstory, they reunite with his creator, emotional resolution, done. It's a good story, but it doesn't necessarily feel big enough to justify the longer runtime. That's kind of the weird thing about these Cartoon Network movie specials in general. Sometimes they really do just feel like longer episodes rather than full movie-level events. That doesn't make the special bad, it's actually really good, but structurally it doesn't feel dramatically different from the show. And honestly, the strength of the characters carries it. Wilt in particular is just such a likable character that getting a deeper look at his history feels completely deserved. And it also reinforces something that makes Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends such a great show, the world building. This universe, imaginary friends are treated as a completely normal part of life. Everyone accepts that kids create them, everyone interacts with them like they're real people, and society has basically adapted their existence. That's such a fun premise, and the show gets a lot of mileage out of it. Plus, the animation and character designs are still great. Craig McCracken's animation style has this really expressive, exaggerated look that makes the characters instantly recognizable. So even the special might be a little longer than it needs to be, the emotional payoff still works. It deepens one of the show's best characters, it expands the lore of imaginary friends and their creators, and it ends on a really satisfying emotional note. So overall, I'd give this movie an A-, 9 out of 10, and 4 out of 5 stars. It might not be a full movie experience, but as an extended episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, it's a really strong one. Honestly, if you're a fan of the show, Wilt absolutely deserved his spotlight episode.